Can you guys hear me? All right, I'm going to assume you guys can hear me. I'm waiting on a couple more people. There we are.
Hey.
Yay, we got it working. Technical
All right.
difficulties, OMG.
It's not too difficult. We got
Uh, took me a minute. Thank you for being patient. So, hey guys, everybody out there on YouTube world, thank you for coming and hanging out with us. We wanted to talk about a couple of things today, specifically repotting, because I know that I've done a ton of repot videos and I've gotten a couple of comments, and I think a few people think I'm crazy, but there are some legitimate reasons to repot, and I'm going to sit. There are some legitimate reasons to repot your orchids. Sometimes, even when it's not the right time of year. In my collection, most of it came up here to Central Florida from South Florida. So that was funny. So that change in environment for them was a lot. I moved here almost 4 years ago, and the first year, I think I lost like 10 or 15 plants. Not only to the environment, because it is a very different climate, a very different environment from what they were used to in South Florida, but the winters, there's actual winters up here. I wasn't used to it, they weren't used to it, and they spent some time in the cold. So anyway, back to the repotting. There are 5 reasons I particularly go into repotting, and I'm going to look at my notes because I'm an old lady and I forget stuff. So I had to make notes. But the reasons that I repot is not just, willy-nilly, I feel like repotting today. I look at the media. Like I said, I've been here almost 4 years. So the media that they were in was, most of them, really old. They had been in that media since South Florida. So this summer, I repotted, I want to say about 15 or 20 that had been in that media for a really long time. And since I use organic media, it does go bad. Josh, please, you're the expert. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it goes acidic. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, yeah, it or all organic media will eventually start to hold on to all and hold all those salts that we use for fertilizer. And that's what really breaks it down, especially if you don't have like any kind of adequate charcoal, and all that salt breaks down stuff very fast. So think of like when you live at the beach, that you have to repaint your house like every couple years, compared to if you live mainland, then you only have to repaint it like every 5 to 6 years. So all that salt is breaking down your media, breaking down your bark. And so it's not so much that it goes acidic, because orchids actually like more acidic soil, or not soil but
I've
media.
been corrected.
Yeah. um, but
So,
it breaks down and it holds more moisture, and that's what rots your roots, and
yeah,
then
the
in
roots don't
turn
like
your
that.
plants and then in turn your plants die.
So I'm going to go ahead and give you my list, and then I'm going to let Josh take over because he's going to give you more of the specifics. Like I said, he's the expert. But this is what I look for in my collection. Obviously, I just spoke to, I explained the old media. I knew that they were in really, really old media and they needed fresh stuff in there to help those roots through the summer um, reinvigorate themselves, right? Then I look for plants that have stunted growth. So if my newer growths are smaller than my old growths, it kind of scares me and I need to know what's going on inside the pot. So I take it out
Yep.
and I inspect, my roots, and I make sure that everything's nice and clean. I give it fresh media, because that stunted growth is not normal. Every growth every year should be bigger than the year before. Wrinkled leaves, I get that more than anything with my phals, because as if you've seen some of my other videos, I like to mount my phals. Most of my phals are mounted, and when they go from a pot to a mount, they do have a transition period, so their older leaves start to get wrinkly, but the newer ones come in nice and firm and fresh and really bright green. For some reason, I don't know why it makes a difference, but at least for me,
Yeah.
when they start putting out their new leaves, they're super bright green leaves when they're mounted. So wrinkly leaves, pests, thrips in particular, I don't know what it is with thrips, but OMG, if I do not do my insecticide at least twice a year, those thrips run rampant. You always have.
A
Um,
lot of times with the thrips, you've got to do it monthly. Use a systemic,
I know, I'm
and
lazy.
sometimes even with thrips, you got to spray twice a month. Those
It's
creatures are the
hard though.
devil.
I'm a teacher. It's hard. I come
It's
home from work 6 o'clock in the afternoon. I can't water
well,
at that time anyway.
do it on a
So
weekend. Do it on a
it's
weekend.
hard.
Do it Saturday
No,
night.
no
Let it go.
excuses, but it is hard. So
Yep.
I that's my routine though. Every 6 months, I do a systemic, one of those 2 times, so that they have a little bit longer lasting stuff.
Right.
But
But if you're only doing it twice a year or twice in the growing season, you're throwing your money away.
that's good to know.
Yeah. You
And
got
then
to
the
do
last thing I see in my
systemics. Got to be
pots,
systemics. Got to be done monthly for them to actually be preventative, because those chemicals
um,
only last. Some only last like 4 to 5 weeks.
I thought it was a little longer than that, but
Nope.
okay.
Nope. Systemics every month.
Okay.
Hey Addison. Hey
I'll start
Gina.
making adjustments.
Yeah.
I'll start making adjustments. And the last thing I've seen in my pots up here that I did not see in South Florida is mold. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the fact that I have a lot of springs around me and there's more humidity in the air up here.
Yeah. We'll
I
talk
can't
about
tell
that.
you what it is, but the
Yeah. Well,
mold on top of the media is horrible.
the snowy white mold or
Sometimes, but more often than not, it's dark color mold. It's not, it's
okay.
black mold, not the white stuff.
Yeah.
But it
So
does get smelly.
we'll
It
we'll
does
get
get
we'll get
smelly.
to that in a little bit, and that's not necessarily detrimental, but there's super fast, easy ways of taking control over that as well.
Cool. And the last thing I see in my pots up here, maybe you can give me some information on that too. It kind of looks like algae, but it's not. It also smells. It's green-ish, but it does not. It's smelly.
Smelly, smelly. Okay.
Yeah, kind
Well,
of like when you go to like a lake or something that has stagnant water and you see that green slimy stuff.
yeah, yeah.
That that.
Okay.
So help me out here, Josh.
All right. So first, so let's talk about the first thing you brought up, um, and you'll have to refresh my memory. Everybody, welcome. Anyways, I'm Josh from the Orchid Den, and this is
Luisa
Lucy
from
from
Paws for
Paws.
Orchids.
Yeah, and so welcome to we wanted to do like more of just like a, it's not so much Q&A, but it's just us talking about getting education, doing a lot of putting knowledge out, appropriate knowledge out on the YouTube, because there's a lot of stuff out there that you can kind of debunk. And also, depending on your geographical growing location too, Some things might be a little bit different from one person to the other. I'm up in
Mhm.
Jacksonville, which is North Florida. You're down in Central Florida, and we
Mhm.
have really different geographical growing locations, microclimates, and stuff like that. So take what we're saying as a guide and not as fact. And
Mhm.
but also at the same time, you can always reach out to you. You can always leave a comment below. You can make sure you
Absolutely.
subscribe um, to Paws for Orchids and the Orchid Den,
Absolutely.
and reach out personally to us individually, or as a collaborative effort. We're trying to
Mhm.
kind of uh, bring information and help all our orchid growers as well. Um, we're big on orchid growing,
Absolutely.
and but mainly education. Dream Man, hey Dream Man, we don't grow a lot of cactus. We're predominantly orchid growers. If I had to name my cactus, it would be more of an like epiphyllum, um, compared to like your typical cactus. So,
Yeah.
um,
For me,
but
it's
yeah,
all about the orchids.
yeah. I mean, it's all about the orchids. That's my business. That's my life. That's
Mhm.
everything, and stuff. And there we go. See,
That's pretty.
beautiful, beautiful. So it is a beautiful genome, and we appreciate you tuning in. We'll also say make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video once we're done. You won't be able to share it now, but make sure, especially uh, for Paws for Orchids, make sure you subscribe and set those notifications. We're trying to grow the channel, and that's how we create more content, is by growing the channel, and so we can provide more content for you guys as well, um, in the orchid world. So, all right, Lucy, what was the first question again? Remind me
So
after my
the
whole big rant.
first thing I look for is old media to see if my orchids need repotting. I try to schedule it so that my cats I do in the summer because they are the more finicky ones.
Yeah.
So I start with them probably late April to start, figuring out when I'm going to repot them, scheduling them. I know it's a big deal, but the cats are very, very finicky. The cats in the past that I have, maybe I did something wrong, but that I've repotted like in the middle of winter, eh, have not done so well for me.
Okay.
And that
So
with the
let's talk
cats
about that.
particularly, it scares me.
Yeah, so let's talk about this for just a little bit. Um, when when you're repotting, whether you're repotting an oncidium or a cattleya or a dendrobium or really anything, repotting season starts in spring, till basically late summer, early fall. You can still repot stuff in. I mean, I've got cattleyas that I repotted early fall, and they're sending out new roots right now. But the main thing is you really do want to start in early spring. You want to catch those, whether it's a cattleya or anything. You want to wait until those they have new growths. Let me see if I can show you with this guy here.
Gina, we're going to ask the expert. I think it's going to depend on the plant you're trying to repot. But if I'm understanding
Yeah,
him correctly, we can still repot right now.
yeah.
In my
I
area,
would
it's
definitely
still warm.
I would definitely wait until spring to repot now, though. We're not doing any repotting. I mean, up in Jacksonville here, uh, we're going to be in the low 50s, upper 40s later this week. So everything's
Mhm.
starting to go dormant. You want to repot as you're getting into growing season. That way, all that new growth is growing. It's starting to put new roots out, and then those new roots allow, um, to get into the new media, to acclimate and establish that
Mhm.
that plant. But you can see here, you can see all these new roots. This is a plant that I repotted just probably, I don't know, what, 6 weeks ago. And
So it's been a minute since that was repotted.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but you always want to make sure that you're repotting within those perimeters. So that's why I always say early spring to late summer. That way, then you still have like some warmer months of fall to get that plant acclimated. And there's things that you can do, um, and supplements you can use along with fertilizers to really initiate and promote new root growth as well. Uh, and those actually include, if you're not using a bloom booster. So say
Yes.
there's 4 perfect months or 4 perfect weeks in a month, right? The first week we're using a bloom booster. That's anything, you have three numbers. So that's a high middle number. That's your phosphorus. So phosphorus is a root growth producer. Everybody thinks that their bloom booster will make or force their plant to bloom, and that's not the fact at all. It's a high phosphorus, which is a root stimulator, and it enables your roots to be stimulated, new root growth, but also it enables more uptake of nutrients and water from your roots to your plant, because remember also most of your flowers are water. So when you're getting more water uptake, you're getting more flowers, you're getting larger flowers, but also you're enabling those roots to pull up more nutrients to where then they can create better photosynthesis, in turn creating a better flower as well.
So
um,
for Gina in Bradenton, Sarasota, you would suggest that she wait till spring.
Wait till spring, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And then so that's the first fertilizer we use. So we fertilize on Mondays. Every Monday we fertilize. All right. If you're not fertilizing every week, you're starving your plant of nutrition. You're not producing, you're not creating the best photosynthesis of your plant. Now, if you're using too much fertilizer, you're burning your roots, and then
Mhm.
you're starving that plant also of nutrients and everything. So it's a really, really narrow. You got to walk that fine line. Um, and we shoot for 100 parts per million, which basically entails 1 teaspoon per gallon. Um,
Okay.
and so then the other 3 weeks, so bloom booster. The
Booster.
second week, we're using a well balanced fertilizer. So Jack Peters 2020 Miracle Grow 2020. We happen
Mhm.
to use
I use
Peters
Osmocote.
Peters XL. We use Peters XL 15515 because it has calcium and magnesium, and we'll get into that in another talk. Um, uh, and because then that's we just start getting to a lot of the science and stuff with that. Um, but so we fertilize 15515 CalMag, Bloom
Hmm.
Booster 15515 CalMag, but in a perfect month. So Bloom Booster this second week away from the bloom booster, the opposite week,
So week
um,
3.
on Friday, we'll use a supplement of liquid seaweed and with just regular plain water. So we have that in our fertigation pump, and we'll just use that as a tablespoon per gallon. You can mix it up in like any kind of like spray bottle. Hand me that spray bottle.
So I want you
Uh,
guys to understand the difference though. He's a professional grower.
like
I'm
this.
a hobbyist. So he's got
But
this down literally to a science.
this will make a huge difference. Even, I mean, you can see if you can grab that liquid seaweed down there on the bottom there for me. And the liquid seaweed is great. It's like what, 20 to $30 for a gallon. You can buy the smaller bottles, mix 1 tablespoon per gallon, and water your plants with it. Whether you're using, a big sprayer, a pump up sprayer, bottle sprayer like this, but use the maxi crop seaweed. This stuff is great. It's chock full
Is
of natural auxins and cytokinins. It stimulates your root growth. And so remember, without roots, we don't have plants. And without roots and plants, we don't have flowers. So
so I
this
use Super Thrive. Is that about, because I know that that one has, if I remember
Super Thrive,
correctly, has
Super Thrive,
seaweed as well.
yes, but no. Seaweed is just a supplement. Super Thrive is another different chemical that
I thought it
actually
was the same.
no, Super Thrive and seaweed are two completely different chemicals. Now they do put a little bit of seaweed into the new Super Thrive chemical,
Mhm.
but two different chemical. Seaweed is a natural occur
Right,
is
right, right.
basically you take seaweed from the ocean, put it in a blender, boom, it's done. Um, and Whereas in Super Thrive is a man-made chemical that helps with a lot of different things, and it's proprietary, and so we don't know exactly what's in Super Thrive, but we just know it helps a little bit. But if you use it too much, then it makes your flowers distorted, and it's going to mess up your flowers. So you can use liquid seaweed every week if you want to. I did a study, what, probably six years ago, and with liquid seaweed every week, every 2 weeks, and once a month. And that's why I only use it once a month, because I'm using a bloom booster, which is a root
Mhm.
stimulator, and then I use liquid seaweed two weeks later, and because it's a root stimulator, and then your plants don't get messed up or anything like that. But
Okay.
I'm talking about using this stuff because when you're repotting, okay, when I repot my plant, I will go ahead and mix up. Of course, I mix up more than this, but you guys can mix it up in
Right.
this in a 1 gallon container, pump up sprayer, and then when I'm done repotting like 24 of these or 100 of these, I take my sprayer and spray all those freshly repotted plants to stimulate root growth, and that's why we get it established a little bit faster, a little bit better, and then they're not jiggling around in the pot for 2 months.
Yeah.
um, and so that's how we can stimulate root growth to get better established plants. And of course, when you have better roots growing and more roots growing, then you're going to have flowers faster.
And healthier.
Yeah, a healthier plant all around, because a lot of times, like, you know if I get a shipment of plants in, that have been from overseas, they're shipped bare root. Or if you get bare root plants, and then you have, say it's a fall show, and you get it in now, you have to wait till spring to really start getting it established. And a lot of times that plant will die because it has, the pseudo bulbs on the plant is starting to wrinkle, and it's using all those excess moisture and nutrients from the previous growth to try to push out a new growth. And so when you use those supplements like a bloom booster, or the supplement liquid seaweed, you get it established a lot faster.
Okay.
So little tips and tricks,
Yeah.
how you can do
I'm
how you can
learning.
get
I'm learning
how
a
you
lot.
can get how you can get new root growth established, um, that way also.
So what do you think stunted growth?
Stunted
What do you
growth
think
is
causes that?
stunted growth. I mean, like naturally you can see this progression here. So you can kind of see, here, that's the second growth, that's the third growth. So you'd want a natural
Right.
progression of growth like that. If you have good growth and then you have stunted growth like this, then that means it's stressed, or the previous growth didn't have adequate um, roots to enable the next growth to really produce a bigger and better growth. And
So that
so
is a legitimate reason to repot and give some fresh media and some fresh
Yeah. I
fertilizer.
mean, definitely. Always, if you see like the plant is not thriving, then you can always take it out of the pot during growing season, and a lot of times also, if it's in flower and you see it's really starting to be not so much neglected, but not thrive as much as previously before, you might have to sacrifice those flowers and cut them off, because remember, the plant's putting so much energy into the
Yeah, that
flowers
I've done.
to
That I've
help,
done.
because that's the reproductive system of the plant, and a lot of times it'll put out flowers as a last ditch effort
Mhm.
to survive. And so a lot of times, if you're not seeing that next level growth, then it's better to cut those flowers, grow it another year, and then let the plant actually establish in the pot, grow better roots, and then next year you'll see a lot better flowers and a lot better plant.
Okay.
So we might have to
But the,
sacrifice flowers. Remember, flowers are our reward for growing good plants, but
yeah.
not every plant that flowers is rewarding you. Sometimes it's a last ditch effort to survive, because
Sometimes it's
it's look
angry.
it's looking for pollinators and it's looking to survive,
Mhm.
and it's putting out just a couple really bad flowers in order to attract pollinators to create seeds so it can create new offspring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wrinkled leaves.
Wrinkled leaves could be a lot of different things. Wrinkled leaves could be stress. Wrinkled leaves could be underwatering. Wrinkled leaves could be that it was trapped in that papery sheath while it
Mhm.
was developing the pseudobulb, and then it creates that accordion effect. I know a lot of the encyclia, some of the sometimes some of your dendrobium will do that. It, it really just depends a little bit on your culture, and that's why it's really important to overlook and pay attention to your plants, not touch your plants every day, but really pay attention to your plants.
Mhm. Talk to them.
Talk to them, be observant, right? Okay,
Yeah.
are they producing roots when they need to be producing roots? Are they producing plant growth when they're supposed to be producing plant growth? Are they starting to flower? Are they developing buds in a sheath? Or are they going into dormancy like they're supposed to be? So there's a lot of different factors.
And some of those factors vary, like you said before, based on your geographical location.
Absolutely. So and what I found is also, it's like, I'm up in so I'm North Florida, and I can find out what a lot of plants are about to do in my greenhouse from YouTube, orchid grower groups, and stuff like that. Because in South Florida, things start flowering about 4 to 6 weeks before we start to see stuff up here. So
Yes, sir.
even demographic areas, you can causes a lot of different changes.
That I know is 100% true because there's
Oh
a
no.
grower that I follow in South Florida, and she has the Heaven's Gate, the Cattleya Heaven's Gate,
Yeah.
and which is a beautiful flower. But hers, I believe, started flowering a week or two ago, and mine just opened. So there's definitely a difference in geographical area. Some of my fowls are also already putting out some of the spikes because we're getting that difference in temperature at
Yeah.
night.
We've
We're not
started
in the
to.
50s yet. We
Yeah.
haven't hit the 50s yet, but we're
You
in the
guys
low
got down to the.
60s.
You guys probably got down to the 50s last month, because I
Yeah, but
know.
it was for like a couple of days. It wasn't all that
But
much either.
that's all it takes. That's all it
Yeah.
takes.
Now it's
Um.
consistent. Now that 20-degree difference between day and night is pretty
Yeah.
consistent.
But
In
it. But
another
that's the
month
thing.
or so, then
Yeah.
we'll be in the 50s every month. I mean, every night.
it doesn't have to be consistent. All it has to be is just for like 2, 3 nights in a row, and then
Yep.
those plants, because now I've got a bunch of stuff because we got into the 40s up here,
Yeah.
and so just for like even though it was just the 40s, um, even though it's just the 40s, we got into the 50s as well,
Mhm.
and and so now I've got stuff that usually blooms in the spring, blooming and starting to spike in the fall. So
Yeah.
it's different, and that's all it takes is just a couple nights for things to get like to think, oh my gosh, it's spring again, or oh my gosh, it's fall again, and so that's how they will force bloom a lot of your phalaenopsis. That's how they'll bloom a lot of your uh, dendrobium by growing them in temperature and light controlled greenhouses, and then they'll go and they'll drop the temps for like less, like three to
Yeah.
five
Somehow,
days.
somehow, Publix always has pretty flowers.
Right. Yeah, because they buy them in flower, just like a lot of us
Right.
do.
Right.
But there's greenhouses in Apopka and Central Florida and South Florida, um, that are temperature and light controlled, and so they're always force blooming flowers and sending them out. That's $1 million. I mean, that in itself is part of the whole $1 million industry of orchid world.
Yeah, that's why it's important to look at those sheets from the AOS
Yeah,
so that you kind of know when most, not, there's no set rule because there's too many hybrids for a rule, but when most of your fowls will be in bloom or most of your dens will be in bloom, there is a season that they have, generally
yeah,
speaking. And those culture sheets from the AOS are, for me as a beginner, were really helpful because I knew what I was looking for each season, or I had an
right.
idea of what I was
Yeah.
looking for each season.
Now
Like I said before, though, the way I grew down south and the way I grow up here is different because the temperatures, the climate in general, but my particular area in Volusia County, there we have a lot of oak trees. We have, like I said before, a lot of natural springs in the area. Like I live 5 minutes from one of the natural springs here.
yeah,
So the environment entirely different from what my environment was in South Florida. In South Florida, I live 20 minutes from the beach and I got that ocean breeze all the time. Well, I don't have that here because I'm almost
you're
locked
more
into the
inland.
middle. I'm
Yeah.
right in the middle of, yeah, of the land, so I'm an hour at least from the beach.
Hmm.
So it's different. All of that plays into how you grow your orchids, especially as a hobbyist. It was very hard for me when we moved up here to kind of try and figure out um, what to do and when to do it, and I know that my orchids had a hard time too because they were confused. You know, they would try to put out spikes and then the spike would fail because I think that the temperatures weren't what they're used to in South Florida. It's
Yeah.
constantly hot down there. If we get
Well,
3 days of cold down there, it's a lot.
yeah. Spikes can blast for many different reasons, whether it's thrips or
Right.
um, uh, too much humidity, or if water drops on them inside your greenhouse
Mhm.
that's not RO water. They can have a fungus on them, especially if they're from a ceiling like up here and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff why your stuff can fail, and stuff like that. But yeah,
It was hard.
uh, it's a there's a extra learning curve when you move to another demographic area.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. So the next thing on the list was mold.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot of times, like people will message me with mold, and most often it is like the white snowy mold growing in your media, and that is what I found predominant to um, your Douglas fir bark mix. So there's a difference of Douglas fir bark and Pinus radiatus, which are two different species of pine bark. Um, the the Pinus radiatus is used specifically in Orchiata bark,
That's
and
what I
that's what we
use.
use. We use Orchiata bark in our in a lot of our mix. Um, we don't use any any Douglas tree for tree fir bark or whatever that is.
Right.
I know that's kind of the stuff that they use because it's cheap and it's readily available with
So
like a
that's the
lot of
stuff
your
at Home
store
Depot.
bought with a lot of your store bought mixes.
So the Home Depot, the orchid mix that the Home Depot sells, that's the
Yes,
Douglas fir bark.
yes, but even some other orchid grower commercial orchid growers will use that as well, and so that's it's just an inferior product. It is cheaper. It makes it,
Mhm.
especially, I'm not advocating for them. We use the best products to grow the best possible plants we can. um, and of course, we've only been doing this on the commercial side for a few years, but also at the same time, we want to be able to produce the best product out there, as possible. But when you're dealing with thousands and thousands and thousands of plants, and you're spending, say, over $10,000 on farm,
Yeah.
some people cut corners, and that's the byproduct. Now if you've got like, now you will on some of this stuff, we mix our own media here, and sometimes you'll get like some, not algae growth, but like green kind of, um, it's like a mossy growth on top, and that's just a byproduct. Of course, you have spores, you have all kinds of stuff growing in. That's not detrimental.
I like that mossy growth because it gives the plant a really nice look.
Yeah,
Um,
you just got to make sure it doesn't take over too much, because
right,
then that can hold in a lot of extra moisture and on your plant, and then rot your roots as well.
right. But the algae that I'm talking about is not that. It's slimy, and like I said, I've
Yeah, it's like
seen
a
it before.
blacky. It's kind of like a blacky stuff. Um,
It's green, but it's like a dark green, and it's slimy, like to the touch. When you touch it,
yeah,
it's slimy.
yeah, and that's a lot of times from not enough air movement in your growing space. Um, but that's a easy fix, and you can take some, like hydrogen peroxide in a
Yeah,
take
I
this
have that.
take a squirt bottle and from the dollar store, take the top off, put it in directly into, because the screw top will usually fit the bottle, and use that and just squirt just a couple squirts, and that'll remove all that algae growth.
Oh, okay.
So it's a quick fix for in a cheap fix.
I use
Um,
hydrogen peroxide, but I use it when I'm repotting. I spray my roots to make sure
yeah,
that if there's any snails, they get killed and that kind of thing. But I didn't know that it works on algae.
make sure you're not spraying your roots directly with hydrogen peroxide.
Really?
Hydro, remember, have you ever soaked your hand in hydrogen
Oh
peroxide?
yeah.
You know how when you take your hand out and it starts killing all your skin cells,
Mhm.
it can
Yes.
it can do the same to your roots. It can kill your
I did.
roots. It can
I've been
damage
doing
your
that for
roots.
years and I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So the best thing to do if you want to, like, just be proactive on any kind of slime or mold or anything like that, it's okay to spray on your plant tissue, but don't spray it on the roots, because remember, hydrogen peroxide kills good cells and bad cells. And so when you spray it on your roots, it can be, it's not 100% detrimental,
Right.
but it can be completely detrimental to that velamin that's surrounding the roots, and then it's bringing it, and that velamin soaks up that hydrogen peroxide. It dehydrates it and can also be detrimental to your actual root that's inside your velamin.
I'm learning a lot today, Josh. Thanks. I've been
But
doing it
yeah,
wrong, apparently.
no, and I always like using hydrogen peroxide for like bacterial infections. Hydrogen peroxide is good because it'll dehydrate all that bacteria that's usually in the plant tissue. Because remember, bacteria, like just like when humans get a bacterial infection, it's pretty serious. We have to go to the hospital for it, right?
Right.
Whereas, and if we get a fungal issue, like a little fungus in our nail or a fungal issue in our nose or whatever, we get a cold, we can just take some minor stuff and get rid
Mm-hmm.
of it. So,
Self-medicate at home.
yeah. So think of fungal issues like is not so much topical, um, but it's easy to take care of. But if it's mushy, smushy, or smelly, it's a bacterial issue, and you need to use a little bit something with more oomph behind it, and that's where hydrogen peroxide can come in, and you can spray hydrogen peroxide on the plant tissue after you cut it out and do surgery, and then
And
you
you
can
cut
do
into green tissue, right? Not.
green. Yeah, yeah. But also you always want to take it and put it away from all the rest of your plants because say like with this, I've got 3 plants here. If there's a bacterial infection here and I water it, it can spread to this plant and this plant just by the water droplets jumping around and hitting it and stuff. So you always want to put it away from the rest of your collection and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, last reason that I repot is because I have this thing about having to know what's inside the pot. So any plant,
Yeah. Yeah.
any plant
Which
that I buy, I have to repot. I cannot. I tend to wait a week or two so that it acclimates to my immediate environment, but I have to know what's inside that pot.
hmm
So I repot everything, and I know that that might not be a legitimate reason to repot,
Yeah.
but I need to know what's inside the pot so that I know that the media that's in there is good media. It's gonna last quite some time, and that it's gonna stay healthy throughout the seasons, right? So
Right.
I have to know what's inside that pot, and I repot. I still have. I just bought a few more plants a couple of weeks ago that I need to repot,
Yeah.
but I just have to know. I can't help myself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and it's all personal preference, realistically.
Mhm.
Don't be upset if you go to repot something like. We'll just use this as an example. There's something like this that's been growing. It's probably been divided a couple times, or if it's been grown like um, what we call a plug from because you go
Mhm.
from flask from seed to flask to seedlings, and
Mhm.
we'll usually put our seedlings in like a plug of sphagnum moss, and then we'll take that plug and we'll repot it into like a 3-inch pot with some bark. Uh, because
Do you
remember,
repot or do you up pot?
it is well, it's relatively the same thing, but it's more. I would consider it more up potting, um, because from like this pot, we're going to go from a 4-inch pot to a 6-inch pot, unless we divide, and then it's a repot. But
Right.
um, still it's the same thing. But when I was a beginner, I would get so mad when I would find a plug of sphagnum
In the
in
middle.
in the middle, and I was like, why do people do this? And it didn't occur to me until later, and as I became more intermediate, and advanced, and then a commercial grower, that realistically, those little seedlings are
Mhm.
not gonna grow into a plant like this, and they're already acclimated into staying that moist. And so we do that as an easement in a nice transition in order for the larger plant to acclimate to the bark or whatever kind of media that the
Whatever you put them in.
uses, um, to grow them into more healthier, um, adult, more mature plants as well, so we can get them to flower a lot better, faster, and easier. Because realistically, like, um,
I never thought about it that way.
yeah, like something, you know, sorry, I'm reaching behind me on the shelf and stuff. Um, so you can see how this growth back here,
Mhm.
and you can kind of see how that transitions.
Right.
And now I've got flowers coming here, but like all these back bulbs here are almost irrelevant because
Right.
they don't have that like nice big mature cane. They don't have that like storage for nutrients and water, to help push that new growth. It's basically
So
this.
they're not really providing the plant anything much
Exactly.
at this point.
And so those are the ones that are probably most likely going to be in that sphagnum plug compared to the other, growth in the future. And so you're going to take those and they're going to die anyways, and they're not, but they serve their purpose
Right.
in previous years. And so that's why we do that. So when we're up potting from like a plug to a 3-inch pot to a 4-inch pot to a 6-inch pot, then you might have some stuff that you find like that. But relatively, it'll it'll happen.
So little by little, I don't have
Yeah,
a beautiful greenhouse like you do. I I'm sure you know, but I grow by my poolside
yeah,
under under the screened in pool enclosure.
yeah.
They
And
seem to like it. They
I've got
seem to, you know,
many
they do good for me. They give me pretty flowers in the appropriate season. So
and
so far so good.
I've got many awarded dendrobiums that I've grown out by the pool. I mean, for cultural awards, for flower awards, and everything. So
For a long
you
time,
can
I
use
was
it.
afraid of gramophyllums because they
Hmm.
have the most beautiful flowers, but that's where I grow. And but their leaves are so thin that I was afraid that they wouldn't be okay out there. But I bit the bullet, and not too long ago, I bought two from, I believe it was a Florida Orchid House. Can't remember really, but I bought two, and they've done great for me. I have three new growths that I think are going to give me beautiful flowers next season. I'm not sure if they have a season like others because they're
Grammatophyllums,
new.
okay, so grammatophyllums have uh, like any most of your other orchids. Think of orchid growing as 4 seasons, right? You'll have
Hmm.
plant growth, root growth, flower growth, and then a rest period. So that's the orchid growing seasons, and they won't all occur in that particular order because, some, like this guy here, this had plant growth, then flower growth, then root growth, and then it'll go into rest period. And and
So do
some,
the like grammatophyllums have an actual season when they bloom? Kind of
yes,
like
typically in spring.
you know, like your phals usually bloom in the spring. I'm sorry, winter into spring. Um, Dendrobiums usually it's summer into fall. At least mine are.
Yeah,
That's when I see
yeah,
mine.
especially your hard cane dendrobiums.
Right,
They'll flower spring through fall, but
right.
grammatophyllums will usually, um, flower in the spring, and then they have new plant growth, root growth, and then they'll kind of go into a dormant period, and in the springtime flower again.
So they go to sleep like catasetums.
Yes, but they're not completely dormant like catasetums. So don't treat them like catasetums. Catasetums are a completely different genera that need more specific dry winter rest compare and grammatophyllums don't fall under that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I was so afraid of them for a long time, but they're so pretty. So I'm like, okay, I got to try.
Yeah.
I got to try.
Yeah. And
I'm glad I
we've
did.
got the yeah, hand me that one.
I
That's a good.
personally I water everybody at the same time. And maybe Josh will have a better suggestion for me, but I've got it so that I have all my plants on the same schedule for watering. My oh, that's pretty. Is
That's
that the baby?
the
That's the baby Chromatophyllum?
that's the dwarf grammatophyllum.
How cute! Yeah, I just bought one
And
from you.
these
Um,
guys flower almost all year long compared to the big grammatophyllums that only flower once a year in spring. Yep.
okay. So somebody was asking a question about watering. So I will have my plants, all of my orchids, set up so that I can water everybody at the same time.
Yeah.
My
Abs-
oncidiums, my most of my oncidiums are in primarily a sphagnum moss with very fine orchiata bark mix
okay.
and a little bit of perlite in there to provide some airflow, but most of my oncidiums are in that mix. And they can wait because they're in that mix. They can actually wait until I usually in the summer I water every other day, but they can usually wait until I water my vandas and my cats, especially that like to dry out before they get wet again. So my cats usually get watered about once a week.
hmm
Um, and that's when my oncidiums get watered. So I have it set up so that everybody gets watered at the same time. What I
Right.
have changed is what's inside the pot, so that if I have plants like my cats that need to dry out, what's inside the pot is going to be chunkier and airier, so that they have the ability to dry out. So there's no spag
Right.
in my cat pots. All my vandas or most of my vandas, their roots are free flowing. They just like growing that way, and I guess the pool provides the humidity they need because they do fantastic. I have roots that are growing towards the pool. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Um, so
And
it just depends. I
it.
tend to water in the summer every other day because it gets really hot. Now in the late fall, early winter, maybe once a week, once every 10 days, depending on what I see on the plant. If I see that, pseudobulbs are starting to get a little shriveled, then I water. But I'm a lot more careful about watering in the winter because it takes longer for them to dry out.
Right.
So
Yeah, and especially when I'm educating and teaching at botanical gardens or orchid societies or orchid sales or whatever, I always teach everybody choose your watering schedule and then adjust your media or your pots um, for your to serve your particular
right.
genera. So Cattleyas, I'm using like a Leica sponge rock bark mix.
Mhm.
For same with hard cane dendrobium. For like your
And your
brassica.
schedule too. You want to make sure that your setup provides works with your schedule. 'Cause like
Oh
I said,
yeah,
I'm a teacher. I can't come home at 6 o'clock at night and have to deal with all of that. So I've tried to set it up so that they are successful in the how I have them set up with the schedule that I can maintain realistically.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah. but
somebody
but
asked
also
about my
but also
school screen.
also remember that when it's hotter outside you're going to have to water a little bit more because in the dead of summer you're getting so much evaporation out of those that media and
I know,
everything.
but that's okay because I'm off all summer,
Well, yeah, yeah,
so that's okay.
yeah.
Somebody asked about my pool screen. I'm not really sure. I had it rescreened when I moved here because it was falling apart. I don't know if there's a difference in the shading of the pool screen. It's just regular pool screen that they installed. I didn't pay any extra for anything, so I whatever it is that is usually put on a pool screen,
Meter.
that's what's there. I
So I've
don't
got a
know.
big tip for you on that. Okay, your
Okay.
pool screen is about 30 to 40% shade screen.
See, I wouldn't know that.
Go on Amazon, get one of these. Okay, this is a light meter.
Mm-hmm.
You turn it on. There's your light meter, and you want to make sure that you're under 5, like relatively um, within your genus's range. Okay, so you on like Cattleya have a range of 3,500 to 4,500 foot candles. You can grow them a little bit darker, but you want to use this as a tool
I think they
for
were asking
everybody,
because
not for
of
you.
burn.
Yeah.
They were asking because
Well,
of burn. I don't have much burn. I don't. My plants don't. My cats don't. Definitely don't get burned. Um, and my Vandas love it. I have Vandas that are out there all year. What else do I have? I have them Drobiums, the hard cane Drobiums are out there too.
hmm
My Encyclias are out there. The only thing I keep close to the house are my Oncidiums because the leaves are very thin. But all my other stuff is out there, and I don't have leaf burn. So I don't know. You might be right. I don't know what the percentages are as far as shade is concerned, but they're doing okay. And I've never measured the light, so I would not know. I have no idea. I didn't even know that that gadget existed. Um, but they're okay. They seem happy and they flower. So usually when somebody tells me my cattleya is not flowering, chances are they're not getting enough light.
but realistically, I used to be a big advocate for that, and I used to grow like under 50% shade cloth, and some of my Cattleyas still wouldn't bloom. So it's not so much. Cattleyas will still bloom in 2,500 foot candles, the same as your basic Phalaenopsis. Um, So just because you're not getting bright light where you can see a shadow doesn't mean that it's not going to bloom. That's why I say go get one of these and use this. Now, also in your pull screen, it is 30 to 40% shade cloth. I've grown a lot of plants in the pull screen. I've measured it. I'm speaking from experience, and
And you didn't get burned either. The plants didn't get burned either.
no,
No,
but you're not going to grow. You're not going to put a Phalaenopsis underneath there.
no, absolutely
So,
not.
um,
Absolutely
but
not.
so that's why I'm trying to. I want to tell everybody, like, make
Yeah,
sure
yeah,
you're limiting your genera to your certain ranges,
absolutely.
because just because we say it's 30 to 40% and I never got burned, I don't want them to put their Phalaenopsis or their whole collection underneath
Right.
there, and then they get burned, and then they say, "Hey, remember that video where you said?"
So it goes back to the good rule of thumb is your highlight orchids would be okay out there.
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
And culture. Remember, you're not going to treat a Phalaenopsis the same as a Cattleya, the same
Correct.
as Miltonia, the same as a Cymbidium, the same as a Vanda. So
Correct.
stick within your range of genera, and use this as a guide for your individual genera,
So
and then
just to be
also,
clear, I grow all of my highlight orchids out
yeah,
there.
yeah,
My Phalaenopsis and my lower light orchids are either in my lanai or up against my house. And this side of my house where they grow, they only get morning sun because my backyard faces east. So it's that perfect time of day sun that they get. So if they're up against the wall of my house here in the back, they're good to go.
yeah, and and just as you said, it depends on the orientation of your house too. So
Mhm.
if your house if your pool screen is on the west side of your home where it's getting blasted by afternoon sun,
Yeah, you don't
is
want that.
different than if your pool screen is on the east side of your house where it's getting early morning and early afternoon sun, and then it's getting
Mhm.
a lot of shade in the afternoon. So
So you got to be
uh,
familiar with your compass rose.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and that makes a whole huge difference as well.
Thank you, Josh, so much for doing this with me today. Thank you for those of you that have been watching and hanging out with us as well. I hope it was informative. It was just a little bit of a chat. Thank you for your patience in us getting on here. I had a little bit of technical difficulties, but now I
But we'll
know
do
for
it
next
again.
time.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
We will definitely do it again. Thank you very much. Have a
Yep.
beautiful night.
And make
Um,
sure subscribe, put on those notifications, like this video, make a comment below. If we didn't touch on something,
Absolutely.
leave a comment below because we're continuing to check out the comments, and I'll chime in and you'll chime in everything, and
Absolutely.
in many months to come, you can always message us at the info at theorchidden.com.
And
um,
pause for orchids
yep,
for sure.
and get a hold of us individually. Come see me at shows. I know you come to a lot of the shows we're
A
at,
lot of
so,
the
and
shows,
we
yeah.
appreciate it. And we're going to be doing another open house soon, so we hope you can make it as well.
I even drive to Tamiami in January.
Um,
So anyway, have a beautiful evening. Don't forget to subscribe, Pause for Orchids and the Orchid Den. Have a good night, everybody.
bye guys, happy growing.
Happy growing.